Does this music only appeal to older people who lived through it the first time from a nostalgia perspective?
I don't think so. I think this music is everlasting. It's the great American songbook, great lyrics, great melodies, and it just expresses people's feelings. And even today when we were playing out here, there were little kids out there dancing, and children are always attracted to the music. It's just because they're not exposed to it as they were in, 30, 40 years ago, as I was. When I was a kid, everybody was still alive. Ed Sullivan had people on, Merv Griffin, Mike Douglas, and all these great singers. So when people tell me that I'm too young to know about these people, well, I grew up in the same era, only they were, 30, 40 years past their prime, but they were always on television. Benny Goodman was on TV in 1986. So there you go. The music's always alive, and it should be out there, and I think it's timeless.
You could be singing any kind of music. Probably, if you were singing cabarets, singing more popular songs, would there be more work for you?
Probably. But I'm just kind of stuck before 1960. I don't acknowledge Elvis and the Beatles. I do. I think they're great singers and great musicians and all that, but I think the Beatles wrote great songs, and Sinatra and Bing and all sorts of people. Ella Fitzgerald did those songs as well. But I think that this music is eternal, and it will always have a place. You're not going to hear a song by Bob Dylan maybe 70 years from now, but 70 years prior to right now, we're still listening to those songs. Does that make sense? Bing Crosby, Russ Columbo, Rudy Vallee, Glenn Miller, Benny Goodman, Artie Shaw, 1,000 others Tony Martin, one of the great singers who's still with us. And L'Chaim, I hope he's still going strong, and I hope he shows up here next year. He doesn't sing too much anymore, but he gets up there and he does his bit and he gets standing ovations. One of the greatest singers of all time.
Tony Martin.
Far, to me,
underrated.
There's Tony Martin, then there's Sinatra. Underrated.
And Tony Bennett?
He's way down on the list. He's great, but I think that, Tony Martin, Bing Crosby, Rudy Vallee, Russ Columbo, Dick Todd, the Canadian Crosby, which nobody remembers, recorded for Bluebird back in the 40s. And the girl singers, there's so many. B. Wayne, who's still with us, she should be down here too, So.
How about the Italian singers? Al Martino?
Al Martino's good. Dean Martin, of course. There's Dean Martin, Tony Martin. I really don't have a favorite, but my all-time favorite, I would say, is Tony Martin, Bing Crosby. And that's truthfully how I learned how to sing, is by listening to Tony Martin, because he has a true voice. And Bing, he's relaxed and all that, but Tony was a musician, could play the sax, clarinet, worked in many bands before he ever sang, with a band. And I love Tony Martin.
You keep Jimmy Durante alive.
Love Jimmy Durante. I love everyone. But when you ask me now, I just say Tony Martin because he's alive, and he really is the last singer of the 1930s that made records during that time, and he's around, and we should. And Herb Jefferies. Honest to God. Now there's, he's like the Russ Columbo, the Italian black Russ Columbo. I'm sorry I forgot, about Russ, but or Herb. But there's so many. When you ask me, I love them all. I'm not prejudiced. I just love them all. I can't really name a favorite, but Tony's alive and Herb's alive. So.
And you're more than just a musicologist, aren't you? A pop culture expert, really, on films, old films.
Oh yes. You ask me any character actor, I can probably tell you their background. Go ahead.
William Holden.
William Beadle. Used to go up on Mount Hollywood, and they'd get around with in a circle with all their cars and motorcycles, and they'd listen to the Benny Goodman Camel Caravan and smoke Camel cigarettes. But I wasn't there. But what are you going to do?
You have an encyclopedic knowledge of actors and actresses.
Well, the great thing is, I think in my lifetime, I've met more of the big band era people through the Big Band Academy, through Milt Bernhardt and Jeff, his son. because of those functions, everyone would show up that was part of that era. And people from that era didn't have the opportunity that I did later on to actually talk to these people, you know, in a conversation where they'd sign an autograph or something and they'd move on. But because I was a little kid or a teenager or, you know, in my 20s, they would talk to me because they, you know, were amazed that when I first met Bob Crosby, I said, I got to talk to the man who sang Nightwind with the Dorsey Brothers. And he said, oh my God, this is blackmail. You know, I think they're turning the lights out on us. So there you go. But things like that, you know, when I just feel that I've been so lucky and fortunate to meet a lot of the people that were actually a part of that era, musically and, you know, entertainment-wise. And I remember when I was a kid, we went to Beverly Hills, and I asked my mom and dad, will you please let me get out of the car and walk by Jimmy Durani's house? And I did, and Jimmy Durani actually waved at me in the window in his wheelchair. And from that moment on, I said, oh my God, I can't believe that Jimmy Durani waved at me. And I got in the car, and my mom and dad said, what are you doing that for? You know? But they said, oh, wasn't that nice, you know, that he actually was there. And he was just in his wheelchair, and he gave a little wave, you know. So.
There's no light here until the fire goes.
Yeah, don't pull the fire alarm.
If we could set it up like right here, would that blind you?
No, I'm okay.
And if you could step with that, put that foot back.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And stand sideways. So I'm looking at kind of like the side of your face.
Yeah, with that eye.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
old red eye.
There's software that'll remove that, I suppose.
I hope so.